What's going on to all my Succession fans out there, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot back again with my weekly recap, breakdown, and review of the latest episode of Season 3 of Succession. We're breaking down Episode 4, which was titled Lion in the Meadow, an episode in which we see Ken and Logan in the same room for the first time all season. Shiv is doing her chores given to her by her father, and our boy Tom is learning how to make wine in prison. We're breaking it all down here in this spoiler discussion, but before we dive into it all, make sure you're checking me out on all my other social media accounts. If you all are new to the channel, well, welcome to the community. Consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. That way you can get the alert for when I drop new content. If you all enjoyed this spoiler discussion, well, make sure to like and share the review. It helps out the channel a lot, but I also appreciate the support. And in those comments, as we've done for the last couple weeks, let's break down this episode together. What were some of the deeper meanings that you took away from this episode? What did you think about the appearance from the Josh character played by the great Adrien Brody? Let's talk about Shiv. Let's talk about Ken, Logan. Was it all a setup? And of course, let's talk about Tom ranking the prison. Is he going to jail? Let's talk about it in the comments below. So just briefly, my thoughts on this fourth episode. Man, I loved it. I loved it. Brian Cox in this episode was so fantastic. We'll get to the lion and the mellow and him having that heat stroke and Ken caring about his dad when it really comes to the meaning of like the family. But so much to break down. I love obviously you all know I'm a big Tom and Greg fan. I love the interactions they have in this episode, and seeing Tom spiraling down that path of just like going to jail, not going to jail. What is this plan that we thought that he had in place last week? There's so much to break down, but at the end of the day, this was a fantastic episode of Succession. Again, putting all the BS aside, when it came to it, seeing Ken being there for his dad, that was a bit of a moment there. We're going to break it all down, but I love this episode, but I want to know your thoughts in the comments below. But we got a lot to break down, so let's get into it, ladies and gentlemen, as we open up with Ken relishing as he sees his dad getting the company being raided, and he's just smiling from ear to ear. But that smile is going to be cut short here because we see Greg gets a text from the line of this episode, the line of the family. Logan himself texts Greg because he wants to meet Greg. He wants to, you know, see where his head's at and maybe get him on this side. And then this is a conversation, which again, whenever Greg opens his mouth, always expect a good laugh. But the cock-a-doodle-doo moment there in regards to him meeting with Logan and Ken saying he's going to want you on his side. And, you know, you're not going to do that, right? Because you're with me, right, Greg? And Greg's like, yeah, you know, I'm on your side. But we'll talk about Greg and that decision that he makes a little bit later on. But it's in this moment too that Ken gets the word that a firing on his end might be coming in. But listen, what a great way to open up the episode again, seeing the last moment of last week's episode with Ken being at the, you know, a really dark moment. His sister called him out in the letter. Doesn't know what to do next. And then seeing, okay, the pressure's been off of me. My dad's being raided. So he's now thinking like, okay, the pendulum's switching back to my side. But, you know, Logan, he continuously is making moves. And we're going to talk about all the strategic moves that Logan, the lion in the meadow, makes in this episode. But you see this smile here? This is one of my favorite scenes of this episode. I absolutely love this scene. We see Ken getting blindsided by literally everybody on this conference call that he has in, and they're requesting that Ken meet with this important investor who we'll talk about, Adrien Brody as Josh, and he wants to see what's going on with Ken and Logan and his family. Should I still invest in this company? So that's what they want to set up. They want to get the family, or I should say the two, Ken and Logan, in the same room. Is it worth staying with them, or is it smarter to join Stewie and our boy Sandy? So that's kind of the meat of this episode, and we're going to spend some time on those moments when we get Ken and Logan in the same room. But the reason I had a smile on my face, let me know if I was just the only one that was just laughing my ass off during this moment where we see Ken, his intro name to get into this conference call, Shiv and Ken. Serious moment here. They have a brief conversation about what Shiv did last week, and like I said last week, as Ken says, this might be a point that we might not be able to get back to where we were, and we get Ken and Logan, at least on the phone for the first time. We get a lot of them in this episode, but listen, the icing on the cake for me as far as comedy beats go, F you and God bless is what Ken says when he gets off the phone. I don't know why I thought that was so funny. I guess just hearing Ken saying God bless. Well, knowing this family probably doesn't believe in anything in religion. It was just so goddamn funny to me. Let me know what you thought of that scene. If it was just me, if I thought that was just hilarious. But let's get back to it. As Logan wants more from Shiv. As we know from the moment he made her president, you know, behind the scenes in the car, he told her, I want you to be my eyes and my ears. And she takes that to the literal sense. She's ready to be that person, you know, checking in throughout this episode, which we'll talk about Shiv. But he gives her the tasks, the duties, the chores per se, of to let's check out this situation with Greg, but more importantly, call the president. Let's put some, well, not call the president, but let's put some pressure on the president via the media. So we see that Shiv has that goal, has those missions, has those chores to do in this episode. And she does them, but it doesn't come with a little bit of pushback. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But let's talk about this tattoo man. As we learned from Rome about 15 years ago when Ken had a bachelorette party, they came across this homeless man and made him do a bunch of crazy stuff. But they narrowed it down to him getting a tattoo of Ken's initials on his head, and he's now back in the fold, and Rome wants to use this against his brother, which I find very interesting about Rome not wanting to join Shiv's idea but doing his own thing. We'll talk about Rome a little bit later, but it's more in this moment. This gentleman by the name of Lori, he used to be an ex-DOJ, and this is a date that Gerri's going on, and you can clearly see Rome, he's jealous. He is clearly jealous, which I don't know, what happened to the girl last year that Rome met, where they met the girl at the bachelor party and had the interaction with Tom, and they were dating. I know they never had sex, so I wondered, is Rome single? He's really making a push to Gerri, but like I said, Gerri has some other things on her mind as she might get back channeled, as Rome says on this date. But there has to be boundaries. Gerri is definitely putting a sand in the line and like, listen, kid, you can do your little flirt here and there, but your girl's taken, and we need to set some boundaries because I'm the CEO of this company. I can't have you, distracting me. So that relationship is just so fascinating to me. But let's go back to my guy Greg as he meets with Logan, and I love when Logan says, hey, Greg. Greg gets what Greg wants, as he says to him, and it's in this moment that the whole thing that Logan wants to present to Greg is an umbrella. An umbrella of protection to stay dry after all the stuff going on with Ken. He's been hanging with Ken a little bit too much, and it's complicating his position at Waystar. So we see Greg, he's listen, go back to season 1 and seeing that version of Greg to where we are in season 3. Of course, there's still the weaseling, kind of confused, boy that we get with Greg, but he is playing ball with the lion himself and Logan in this scene as he's like, okay, what's on the table? What can I actually get from you, Mr. Logan here? But of course, you can't pull Logan's leg. He's like, listen here, Greg, why don't you F off and think about the proposition I gave you? Come up with a list and demands. And again, Greg always puts a smile on my face as, he leaves, Logan leaves the room. Leave it to Greg to leave a pretty funny joke to me as he's talking about the Coke and rum and chucking it. And, things back in the day might have been easier in the 60s, but not necessarily for everyone. Again, Greg is someone that has come a very long way. And I said it a couple weeks ago. Don't be surprised if he ends up being the CEO of Waystar, or at least the parks, as we'll talk about his new position that he wants to get into. But let's talk about Frank here for a brief moment as he calls Ken, and he wants Ken obviously to attend the meeting. And, we see obviously Frank and Ken. We know that Frank is Ken's godfather, and there's a lot of trust there. But trust doesn't mean anything to Logan, because we see as the camera pans, Logan has his hand straight up his ass because he's making him say these things to get Ken on his side. And I just find it so interesting with Frank. Going back to season 1, Frank gets fired by Logan. We see Frank joining Ken. Then he's back in the fold. It's just like, what's the angle with Frank? He seems like such a nice guy, but I guess the Roy family has rubbed off on him because he just, wherever the money goes, Frank goes. Let me know what you all think about Frank. Whose side is he really on? Let's talk about it in the comments. But let's move on to Tom having some pushback to his wife in this moment here, Shiv, as she is, again, her chores are to get Greg on our side, but also put the pressure on the president via the news. So where does she go? To her husband to delegate these chores. It's the chopping block. It's have a certain order of progress here in the process of all this stuff. So she goes to her husband and she tries to put the pressure on him, but for about 0.2 seconds, Tom was like, yeah, we'll see, honey, I'll see. Ravenhead is someone, it's a delicate situation, so we'll see about that. And Shiv's like, okay, we'll see about it. No, we're going to see about it right now. As like I said, it lasts all but 2 seconds when he stands up to her, but he eventually agrees, yes, honey, I'll talk to Ravenhead. Yes, honey, I'll talk to Greg. But also, I can't leave out one of the funniest moments of this episode, and many funny moments with Tom in this episode. As he's talking to her, he's looking through like rankings of jails to go vacation on, as he is really putting himself in that box of going to jail, which again, we talked about it last week when he was on the phone, when he had that conversation with Logan, he gets the information from Greg, and he's setting up that meeting with Rex. I took that as like he's like secretly planning and putting his chess pieces on the table to maybe swoop in and kind of maybe do something to Logan and maybe get him on tape saying something. But it seems like he is really willing to take the fall for all of this, or is he just really doing some method acting and really playing into, yeah, I'm going to jail while coming up this plan? Because it really does seem like Tom is willing to bite the bullet. Let me know where you all stand from last week of us thinking he was trying to make a move to now us seeing that he really does want to take the fall for this. Let's talk about Tom in the comments below. But moving on, speaking of another character, which I gotta admit, the two main characters, two of the more important Roy family members, Rome and Connor, have been kind of playing in the background. I assume Rome's going to be a more of a pivotal character because we know Connor isn't like a really big player in the show. But we get Connor in this episode, and he has a bit of a moment here as he wants to put, he wants to be the good son, but he wants to talk to his dad. But Shiv, again, is delegating this stuff, and she's keeping an eye on everything. And Shiv's thinking this is going to be a piece of cake. This is Connor. We're going to put you on a TV show, Con, and you can do your wine tasting on that show. But Connor's like, no, I want more. I want to get back to my president run, and I want to, listen, I got some leverage here, as he lets Shiv know, I can tell the media about our dad. No blacks, no Jews, no women above the 4th floor. And that's where Shiv's like, okay, maybe this is going to be a little bit more of a serious conversation than I first anticipated. But Khan's like, you know what, baby sis? I don't really want to talk to you. I want to talk to someone that's in charge, which keep that in mind with Shiv in this episode as she's trying to shake the tree and try to put her foot in the sand. But people aren't really adjusting to Shiv, which we'll get into here in a little bit. But let's talk a little bit. Let's get into the conversation about Shiv, because again, we see her shaking this tree, making demands to Carl and Frank, and how's the deal going on with Stewie, and they can really care less. They're more concerned about what they're eating for lunch right now. But again, I think it's important in this moment to see how people are taking in Shiv, whether it be her brother, whether it be obviously Frank, whether it be what we're seeing with Carl. People aren't taking her seriously and not listening to her. But again, she's taking it. She's just like, my dad wants me to do this. I have to prove this not only to my dad, not only to these men, but to myself. So I'm loving what the show is kind of doing with Shiv this season in regards to power of position and her being taken more seriously. And again, we all know, as we learned last year, how people feel about Shiv, her being smart, but thinking she's more smarter than what she actually is. Is she playing herself? Is she putting herself in a good position? Let's talk about it in the comments. But let's go back to finally meeting one of the star characters. We met Sanaa Lathan a couple weeks ago. We know that Alexander Skarsgård will make an appearance in this show, but we also know that Adrien Brody was going to be appearing, and this is where we meet him as the big investor, Josh, and he wants Ken and Logan to play a, father and son. But the race is on who's going to meet Josh first, as Ken is the one that makes it there. And he makes his, pitch. We all know that Ken has his little pitches in mind. We saw one earlier this season, and now we see another one while he's trying to partner up with Josh. And Josh is like, sure, Ken, we'll think about that. But he's more concerned about the lion that just approached to the Meadows. As we see, ladies and gentlemen, for the first time all year, the two, father and son, are meeting in the same room, and they say, hi, son, hi, dad. Little brief hug there. Telling you all, Jeremy Strong and Brian Cox, they are these characters. And there were so many moments in this episode, and we're going to really spend a little bit of moments, some time on this scene. I'm going to break down this entire scene between the two. The tension, the without speaking, the eyes, the being uncomfortable, it was just beautifully performed by these two actors. But let's spend some time on these sequences here as Logan tries to make a quick conversation with Josh. He's like, listen, let's just make this happen. What do you want? And let's cut a deal. And Josh is like, nah, bruh, we're going to have a walk, and we're going to really sort this situation out, which I got some questions for you all about Josh and if this was all a setup. But let's get back into it as Josh leaves briefly. And this is what I was talking about with the performances. He leaves Ken and Logan alone in the room, and there is no words whatsoever, but god damn it that I feel that tension in that room when they're just sitting there. And I know Ken wants to say something to his dad. I know Logan, as he said last week, if I'm in a room with that kid, I'm going to punch him. There's a lot of tension, and they didn't have to say one word. You just felt that tension based on their performances. And there's another scene like that coming up in a second here. But we get this moment where the walk begins, and we learn that Josh has lost, I think he said, over $350 million. Like, god damn, that's a lot of money. But he wants to know, where am I going to get my money back from? Is it you? Is it Stewie? Is it Sandy? That's what's more important to him. But we see Logan yet again shows his power hand as we see them walking, and Josh is like, you know, talking to Ken about, what I want you to do, Ken, is to back off of your father. Let's sort this out, backtrack your words, and let's get back in hand. And this is where Ken is like, wait, is this what this meeting was? Has my father already gotten to you? And I'm thinking in my head, damn, Logan is good. This man is the king. He can get the investor that's losing $350 million to be on his side, to go get his son back on his side. I'm thinking Logan's making moves, but it's not quite the case, ladies and gentlemen, as even Logan's like, are you paranoid, son? Is the drugs getting to you there? But I'm not going to lie. I thought Logan did get to Josh in that moment. Let me know your thoughts on that. But speaking of Josh, he just wants to cut the BS. He wants to get straight to it, and he wants to know, will this work between you and your son and your dad? Are you guys going to make this work? And of course they say yes, and they, you know, and Josh is just like, I don't know, guys. I don't know what to do with you two. But speaking of BS, Logan's the king of the BS, ladies and gentlemen, as he says to the Josh character that, you know, Ken's a good guy. He's a good boy. He made a mistake. You know, he did something, I think he went a little bit too far. But when the dust settles and this is all over, hell, he has it in him. He's my son. He's going to probably lead this kingdom one day. And Ken's just like, you talking about me, Dad? And just, again, it's just Logan knows how to use those words and how to play people when he wants to. And I love that moment between the two, because it's followed up by this great moment here as Josh seems to, you know, he gets the answer that he's looking for, and they're making their way back, and he's making a call. And this is where Logan and Ken, they do the eye thing. They don't say anything except for Logan says what? He says one word to him. So at least we're making a little bit of progress to them finally having a conversation, until they're making their way back up to his mansion, to his castle per se. And this is where the title of this episode comes in, Lion in the Meadows. They're walking back, and we see Logan tells Ken, listen, all that stuff was a bunch of BS. You say whatever you want to say to your date when you want to get them in bed, which was a great line by Logan there. But he informs Ken the news that Greg has switched sides, which I wonder if that was intentional. I wonder if we just didn't see it on camera, if Ken intentionally wanted Greg to join into the fray with his dad so he can be, you know, put the lion in the den, right? Or put the chicken, the cuck-a-doodle-doo in the den so he can get as much information from him. Or did Greg make that move on his own? Let me know your thoughts there. But he finds that out, and this is where Ken, they have their back and forth. Ken wants him to retire right away. Logan says his things to him, but he mostly says, you lost, son. You're done. You're over. I have the family. What do you have? A lawyer and a bunch of Instagram or Twitter followers? It's over for you. But speaking of older, this is a very interesting moment as they're making their way back. They're walking back, and Logan's getting a little, and I love how the show like cuts the audio when you could just hear Logan breathing, like he's breathing very heavily. We got to remember, season 1 wasn't that long ago. In the timeline of the show, this man is probably, I want to say, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, I would say season 1 has been, as far as timeline from season 1 to season 3, we're probably less than a year away from him having that heart attack, and we really don't even know like how he was able to come back so quickly. So he still is dealing with his health and obviously being a little bit older in age, and talk about this job being probably more stressful than the president, right? But we see him breathing heavy, and this is where Ken is, you know, they're having their conversation, and Ken, you know, says to him, I know what's going on with you, Dad. I know people aren't liking Shiv. Obviously, people don't like you. You got the pressure coming on from the president, and they're having a little bit of back and forth there. And forget the bear hugs, forget the drama, forget all the stuff between the family. Reality kicks in right then and there, because we see physically Logan breaks down. He has a moment. He has, I think they said it was a heat stroke that he had at the moment, and he needs help from his son, and his son's there. He's literally carrying his father. He's behind him. We see that Josh is holding him up front, but metaphorically speaking, who did he have to back him up? It was his son in that moment. But I wonder, was this a setup from Josh? Was this a setup from Josh and Stewie talking about, oh, I think it's here, oh, I think it's here? Was it all a part of a plan to physically show that he isn't the man for the job anymore? That old lion needs to be put in retirement, and there needs to be some new kings in the way. Let me know if you all think that this was all set up by Josh, or if it just happened to be the coincidence that they got lost in the meadows. He's probably been down these meadows thousands of times. Let's talk about that theory in the comments below. But again, I think it's very important to know that when all the BS is put aside, his family's weird. His family, they betray each other. There's the Shiv letter. There's the Logan, screwing over his sons and his daughters and his family and his wife and everyone. But when the shit hits the fan, Ken was there. He was there to look out for his dad when he needed him the most. Let me know what you all think about that. But let's wrap things up, kind of finish up some of the other subplots. Tattoo Man comes to the office. Rome sees that he just removed the tattoo, but he's giving him $1 million if he can find a picture of that tattoo. But I think it's just so important in that moment. Rome is just so desperate to get the approval from his dad. And it's so interesting that Rome is now, he switched sides, right? Because literally last week, he didn't want to sign a letter with Shiv, but now he's like willing to bury his brother and have him be embarrassed by this tattoo thing and him being woke and all that stuff. So it's just like so weird to see him. I guess he wants to win. He doesn't want to be attached to someone else's win. He didn't want to be attached to Shiv's idea. He wants his own idea. He wants his own way to bury his brother. Very interesting moment there. But again, $1 million for a photo that man was embarrassed of. Yeah, I would have done the same thing. Let me know if you are. $1 million, come on now. But moving on, we know Tom. And we know my man Greg. Whenever they share the screen together, you can always expect a good time. But Tom, he pays a visit to Greg, and seeing these two, as I refer to them in the grand scheme of things, as like seeing these two ants playing in this sandbox with if I'm being frank, scorpions. It's just so fascinating to see them making their moves, and whenever they have conversations, to me, it's so interesting. As Greg wants a position in the parks, he wants to be the head honcho in the parks, and we see Tom like, oh, that's a good idea. Meanwhile, Tom's like, I'm gonna be sucking off some guy in prison while you're running the castle in the parks. Again, just the Tom and Greg lines are just so funny. But there's a really bit of a serious moment here as Tom goes over the story about this slave boy who the slave's owner pushes his wife down the stairs, as he's referring to Shiv in this moment, castrates the slave boy, pretends that the slave boy is his wife, and they become a happy couple. And we see that Greg says, I would make you my wife, castrate you and make you my wife in a heartbeat, as he's like, let's wrestle each other, Greg. And you can just see again, he is just spiraling out of control in this moment, because we go from that scene to him checking in with Shiv, and we learn that, he's gotten one win. He got the win. Greg is officially coming on to this signing at JDA. He's going to be helping out Logan again. Is this part of Ken's plan? Only time will tell. But also we learn that the Ravenhead situation hasn't been settled yet. But more importantly, Tom goes into his prison wine story, and he wants he wants advice, which him talking about wine in prison and not being able to eat and read was just, it was a sentimental moment, because again, we all know these people, these characters in the show, they're meant to be assholes. We're not supposed to necessarily root for them, but it's the performances, it's the actors that make me care for them. I genuinely feel bad for Tom in this moment. Yes, he's pompous, he's privileged, but I feel bad for him that if he is indeed following through with going to jail, I would feel bad for him in this moment. But it's in this moment that he wants to just talk to his wife. He wants advice for his wife, and yet again, she's not there for him. She has to take the call from her dad. So again, Tom, is he making moves? Will he divorce Shiv sooner rather than later? Is he making a play to take out Logan? Only time will tell. We get the call. We hear that Carl isn't too happy about Shiv's input, and it's just so fascinating. And also, she tells him about Tom winning over Greg, but more importantly, the way Logan makes Shiv, who in this entire episode, she's making moves. She's telling people what to do, even if they don't really care to hear from it. But it's so funny, or not funny, but it's just so fascinating to see Shiv, who I perceive as like someone that demands your control, demands your attention, how small she felt in that moment where her dad told her to stop doing what you're doing, play the line, play fair, hangs up on her, and she's just like, okay, Dad, and just how small she felt in that moment. Again, the performance is incredible, but it just shows you these kids are still children to their father. I think that whenever he like checks them, it just really puts in perspective how they feel about him. But as we wrapped up this fantastic episode, Shiv bounces back pretty quickly, ladies and gentlemen, as she's finishing her chores. She makes her way. You know, she sent Tom to do the Ravenhead and didn't get it done. She's going to get it done, as she just says, put the pressure on the president. That's not a request. You're going to do your job, and you're going to do it as I say it. And again, I thought that was a really quick bounce back. It shows you, yes, she can be put in her place per se, but she still has some power. She still has some sway, and she still has some confidence and some ego, unlike her brothers. So I really like that moment with Shiv. But we see Gerri having some advice for Rome in regards to keep the photos to yourself, which I do think those photos will maybe be, you know, his kind of secret bomb against his brother, or they might not come to light ever again. But I think they will inevitably come back to light. But she tells him, remember, put yourself number one. You got to tattoo that on your forehead. You got to think about your position, because if you put out these photos, you're attached to those photos as well. So good advice by Gerri. And again, that relationship is just so fascinating to me. But we end the episode with Logan poking fun of the president on the phone. And we see, because the president's obviously, he got the word about the Ravenhead because they're close friends. And we see Rome finding out what happened to their dad, which Rome ends up calling Ken, telling Ken that the deal that you thought you and your dad worked out is no longer there. Josh saw how brittle, how weak, how, you know, older our father is, and he is backing on this deal, which leaves Ken to seeing someone getting on their helicopter, no other than Stewie. And we see Stewie, we see Josh, who Josh says in the episode, oh, F Stewie, F, you know, Standy, I'm with you all, but that was just all part of a ploy, which makes me think that this was all part of Josh and Stewie plan. Let's embarrass this old guy, come and join the fun, as Ken sees this, and they're very friendly, right? So I'm thinking in my head, did Ken see that moment and says to himself, I need to go and maybe backtrack and maybe help my dad and beat him, because he just embarrassed my dad. He just made my dad have this heat stroke, and this was all part of his plan. Or was it the other side of Ken? Maybe I need to put more pressure on the situation and maybe get into cahoots with Stewie again and maybe join forces with them. It's just, I don't know which side Ken is leaning on. I'm thinking he's leaning towards more of helping his dad because he was embarrassed by Josh. And like I said in this episode, whenever it seems like they all hate each other, but they seem to kind of rally together when there's people coming at them. So it'll be really interesting to see if Ken will play sides with Josh and play sides with Stewie, or if he's going to try to have some revenge for his father. Only time will tell. Let me know what you all thought about that. Which side do you think Ken's leaning on? What do you think about Logan and his situation? We still got to remember the FBI is still there and everything with the cruises. What do we think about Tom and him going to jail? Does he have a plan in play? What's going on with Shiv? Will she eventually just veto everyone, her and Greg ruling it all? Let me know your thoughts, your theories, your predictions, overall thoughts of the episode, and what you hope to see in the weeks ahead. Let's talk about it in the comments. As always, I appreciate every single one of you all for watching these reviews. I love this show, but more importantly, I love interacting with you all. So before you leave, make sure to like the video, share the video, leave your thoughts in the comments, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and oh yeah, hit that notification bell. That way you don't miss any of my other future reviews. Hope you all are staying safe. Hope you enjoyed this review. As you can see on the screen now, subscribe to my channel. Check out my other content. We'll catch you in the next video.